Hey, Rob at Gills, going to do a video on the care and feeding of your carburetors and the fuel system on the car. Make sure that this is a successful transplant. First, we're going to start with the gas tank. This is one of many that we've installed this past year. And what you want to do is look inside the sending unit and inside the tank and see what kind of condition the tank is internally, because the original black coating inside will have flecked off by now, and you'll see there's little black flecks inside the fuel filter. And then the miserable fuels we have nowadays eats the inside of the tank, and with all the oxygenation, it rusts the inside of the tanks, and then you get rust in the tank going into the fuel system. But most people think that the rust inside the float bowls is dirt because it looks like brown dirt, but in fact it's rust. So we've got to clean. I'm assuming we got a clean fuel tank. Next thing up is we've got your fuel tank, a fuel filter, and a changeover valve, and inside, deep inside here, is a cork that will shrink over time, and that will allow the system to lose prime and makes it very difficult for the engine to start. Can't get any fuel up to the fuel pump because you're pulling in air right here. Next, you've got the fuel pump itself, and there's a reason it's got a priming lever on here, because they didn't design a decent fuel system to begin with, and so after the car sits for a few weeks, you're going to need to prime the fuel system as opposed to grinding on the crankshaft. But make sure you got a good fuel pump and a correct original fuel pump, which will produce the correct volume. It's low pressure, high volume fuel pump. So now we're going to come over here to our carburetors, and we're doing an actual cold start. These things have been cold soaking out in near freezing weather overnight. Actually, for 2 nights. It's been 2 days since I've started these things, and so I want to make sure that you understand it's an actual cold start to test the choke and the carburetors. But before that happens, we're going to go over the carburetors themselves, care and feeding. And in no particular order. Let's see, idle mixture screws. We'll start here. Idle mixture screw. This the carburetor idles on the first barrel only, and this is where you're going to do your adjusting. And the adjustments here are very minute. Doesn't take much, and I will show you that. Hopefully, my old school dwell tachometer will be able to adjust these things using RPM, assuming that's going to work. The second barrel does not idle on the second barrel, so this idle mixture screw is a dummy. It just plugs a hole. There's nothing in there. Just don't touch it. Doesn't do anything. Idle. This is your idle speed. So whatever you do, this is what you're going to use to adjust your the idle, the RPM. I'll get it set up for you. But that's where the idle is adjusted. Choke, you have a little bit of leeway here on the chokes. These can be adjusted to move these levers in and out to line up with the choke cable coming down from the center. Be sure to lube the choke cable. This is a really weird system. So you got your choke cable here pulling straight up, yet these levers are going to come out at an arc, coming out like this. And so there's an awful lot of drag on here. Plus, what you're doing is you're actually moving all the throttle linkage. So in fact, I'll do it real quick right now. This is your fast idle, and so you'll notice that when I pull here, your throttle linkage is going to move. Okay, that's how you get your fast idle for cold starting. And what adjusts adjusts or controls the fast idle is this little set screw right down here. The clearance between this set screw and the lever it operates on is 15 thousandths. I'll get that set up for you, because there's no way you can get a feeler gauge in here and check this. But the easiest way to do it is you just simply pull up on here, and you can see this operating. And if you ever lose that little screw, you got no fast idle, and drives people crazy trying to start their car. Let's go over the second barrel and the counterweight and the second barrel throttle butterfly and its relationship to the first barrel. The counterweight helps. Let's say you've floored the accelerator, and after about 3,000 RPM, the vacuum opens up the second barrel diaphragm, and the second barrel opens up. And then when you are chopping the throttle, the linkage here closes the first barrel, and this linkage right here is what artificially forces the second barrel to close, and that's controlled by this little screw right here. This is a jam screw, and this is the screw that controls the contact from the first barrel to the second barrel. And what you want is just a slight amount of movement. You'll see how little there is right there. This set screw right here is impinging on the second barrel throttle shaft, and you just want just the teeniest amount of movement on here. You can see there's a little bit more there, and what you want is for these to close. And the only way the car will idle is on the first barrel, and you have to have the second barrels closed. And what you don't want to do is screw these down too tight, because if you screw it down too tight, what it does is it forces the second barrel closed, and then it starts opening up the first barrel, so that'll mess up your idle. So you want to make sure that you have just a minimal amount of movement here. That even may be a little too much, but that's for right now. I've already tested them, and so it's actually doing just fine. What you want also is to adjust these things. I use the synchrometer, the BK 1 through 35. Right out of the box, this thing fits the carburetors perfectly. And what you want is balanced airflow through the first barrel of each carburetor, and no airflow at idle coming through the second barrel. And the factory on this little device right here, you ordinarily would read about 2.5 in terms of the airflow on the second barrel. After the machine work that our guys do, you get 0 to 1, so that they do an excellent job. Let's see. There is a drain on each carburetor. Actually, there's a drain from here over to this okay, there's a drain hole port right in here, because they know these things are going to get fuel in them, and the drains over to this first barrel, and then from here it drains out the bottom. And this thread down here is a 6 by 0.75, so be very careful when installing the drain hollow bolts, and screw them in first, and then attach the rest of it, because it's real easy to cross thread those. That's 0.75 pitch. Let's see, when you are working on the carburetors, be sure to stabilize the fitting in the float bowl cover, and then screw the swivel fitting on the fuel line. Otherwise, you take the chance of ripping the threads out of the float bowl cover. Also, when the carburetors are installed, there's enough movement upwards and laterally that if you just install the carbs and bolt them down, that the big air log, the air collector, will not fit on the studs. So what I suggest is get the carburetors installed loosely to where you can install the air log, get the carbs all aligned, put the air log on, get a couple of nuts to hold it in place, and then tighten down your some of your bolts here to secure the carbs, and then pull the air log off and secure the carbs completely, and then I would double check putting the air log back on. But prior to that, what you'll want to do if you want to run the car without the air log in place is to take a return spring and run a wire over to the inner fender where the hood bumpers are, and set up a little wire right there to attach the return spring to, and that way you can run the car without the air log, and you can check your airflow and everything on your car before you do the air log, because once the air log is in place, there's not much that you can do with the carburetors in terms of tuning and adjusting. And speaking of which, the only way you can tune and adjust these things is when they are hot. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is get this set up where we can do an actual cold start, and you can we'll see how, double check everything. Oh, also once if it ever comes up in conversation, if you want to check your chokes to make sure they're not sticking, what you can do is pull up on a little bit on them, and you should be able to move them like this. That's how freely they should move. There's no metered air at this point, so these things can be sloppy loose as long as they operate. That's all you want. The metered air is taking place back here. All right, so I've got everything hooked up. Let's see, got fuel. All right, let's see, give it one. I think I'll give it one goose. Switch on, choke. Not bad for ice cold carburetors. Starting to get some heat through the radiator. Alright, we're warmed up. You need to disconnect the throttle linkage so you can operate adjust each carburetor independently. So I'm going to disconnect the throttle linkage here and hold on to it so I don't have a runaway carburetor. Now we're going to go check our airflow. I've obviously already tuned them, but I'll give you an idea what the airflow is on this meter here. We're reading, looks like 6, almost 7. There's 5.5, so we're good to adjust some things. So I think the idle is a little low. We're going to bring it up by adjusting this one. See if that's enough to get to 6.5 or 7. Yeah, 6. A little bit more. There we go. 6.5, almost 7. 6.5, almost 7. Check our second barrels. You see no airflow through the second barrel there. No airflow through the second barrel there. I'll do this again. Alright. Much better than the factory. Now we're going to do our idle mixture screws. And you'll be able to hear, well actually what I'll do is put this back on and we'll come over here and you can watch the idle. Okay, so we're on the low scale. Low RPM, so we're running around 650, 700, no there's 700, it's about 650 RPM. And what I'm going to do is start adjusting the idle mixture screws and you'll see the RPM drop. So what you're going to do is screw the idle mixture screws in and out until you get the best running and without the carburetor being lean and backfiring on you. See our idle degrade, so we're back out. It's best running. It's on the first carburetor, second carburetor. Alright, degraded the idle, now we're backing out. We're best idle. Pop the linkage back on.